This episode of Own the Grey is brought to you by I Am. Discover your unique talents, realize your potential, and align to your path. Take the first step to uncover your life purpose by visiting debrajones.ca/courses. Are you starting another chapter in your life? Are you thinking about making changes? Are you hesitant because it's a new direction and you don't know how it will play out? Do you wish you had a crystal ball to see into your future? Well, not only is there a way to know what's possible for you, there's a handy guidebook too. And if you want to know more, you'll want to listen to this. Welcome to Own the Grey, a podcast to dispel the notion that aging is undesirable and setting new, positive attitudes. I'm Deborah Jones, and I believe you can be vibrant and healthy throughout the best years of your life. My next guest provides clarity and direction in times of change, growth, and uncertainty. She knows how to see potential and possibility in life, and she knows how to solve problems and how to have a deeper understanding of ourselves. She's been my go-to resource when I've needed clarity in my professional and personal life. We've known each other since I started out on my spiritual path as a feng shui consultant back in 1999, and we have been walking a parallel path, reconnecting at crucial turning points throughout our lives. The latest reconnection was just last week when I needed some clarity on the rebranding process of my business as I move into uncharted territory, and I knew I needed a guidebook to take along for the ride. Judy Honorato has everyone's guidebook. She has yours too. She needs only your birth details, and then the metaphorical book becomes available to you. Today, she will take us through her unique process that can take us from confusion to clarity in the shortest possible time. Welcome to the show, Judy.
Thanks so much, Deb. Such a pleasure to be here.
So you have always come through for me when I've needed guidance, and you work primarily with enterprising and entrepreneurial women in times of change, growth, and expansion. And these are such times. So you have a knack for getting me oriented, seeing what's possible and probable so that I can make clear decisions, know my direction, and get a sense of what I need to do next. And as a guide, you can also help us set a course and align to that course and get clear on the path towards happiness and success. So how do you do this, Judy? What's the process?
Well, a lot of it's an intuitive process. So while I'm going through a process, it takes on its natural course with each person, depending on where they're at. Somebody comes to me at a point of change. They're maybe at an end of a chapter, or they're wrapping up a chapter. Maybe life has thrown them a curveball, a new beginning that they didn't expect. Or it's time for them to take back their own personal power, if you will, like come back to their own identity. As women, we spend, especially raising families or with careers, we get lost in those. And actually, I was talking to someone just a couple of days ago. The message keeps changing. And that happens with our identity, I think. We get messages from family. We get messages from the different positions we have in careers. And, that version of ourselves often gets distorted along the way. And I think when we come to this age and stage of life, we're at that point that, okay, there's space because maybe the kids have left the house or just don't need our attention and nurturing the way they did. Or we've come to a realization that being so dedicated to career has, squeezed out that space for us just to be ourselves and to relax and to maybe take care of our well-being and our health. And so it's being in that point where it's like, yeah, it's about me now. And whether that's taking your business, like you said, enterprising and entrepreneurial women, it's that place of Enterprising means, okay, what am I going to work with? Where am I going to go? So whether that's in creating something from a volunteer level or whether it's a career as an entrepreneur, it's this really juicy time to come into your own
Yeah.
and to make a difference.
Allowing ourselves to discover who we really are. That's not necessarily an easy path because we think we are who we are, right? We go through life and this is me kind of thing, but deep down inside sometimes there's that knowing that that is not really who I want to be.
Yeah, and you know what? It's different things at different ages and stages of our lives, right? At the time of motherhood, it was a wonderful time, and that was everything that I wanted. Well, I mean, is it ever everything we want it to be? But you know what I mean? It was a good stage. But my kids are I've got adult kids now, so that role has changed, and that duty has changed because along the way she's been running, developing her own business and studying more. I mean, learning something every day. You're ever evolving and ever changing. And I think the biggest thing is that you're actually at that point where you're kind of settling into your own bones. Like, it's like, this is who I am and this is where I'm going. And what I find is, we're at a new place right now with women, in, I don't know, 40s, 50s and beyond, in the sense that we're not looking at life as downhill. It's actually this beautiful creative space of living with vitality. And that vitality is soul and spirit. At the end of the day, it's, yes, aging bodies, absolutely. And we've got to do our health side to absolutely take care of that. But at the core is the spirit and the soul and the fulfillment. And yeah, the whole feeling of fulfillment and satisfaction, not only in who we are, but what we're contributing and the day. There's nothing better than going to bed at the end of the night, at the end of the day, with like a smile on your face and feeling tired because you've done something and you've made an impact, however small it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with you, Judy, following your path, feng shui and numerology and all of those things, you've really taken all the things that you've learned along your journey, and you've created something that's really unique. I don't know anybody that's doing it quite like you, Judy.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
But it's funny. It's you that I turn to in my time of need. So whatever it is you're doing, your special magic, I mean, I call it magic because, there's no set course, is there, in the work that you do? You're guided as to what resources to go to for a particular circumstance. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, you know what? I think, I love cooking. And at one point, way back when I was in my 20s, I considered becoming a chef. And, I think it's kind of like that ability to be able to stand at the fridge or look in your cupboard and say, okay, what do I want to eat? In other words, what do I want in my life? And what do I have? Like, what ingredients do I already have? What ingredients do I need? What options do I have? Okay, I got a chicken. How many ways can we cook a chicken? Right? So we've all got all these options. And so, but it's knowing which ones appeal to you, what flavors you like, or are you going to be adventurous and try something different, or are you going to go with something that's comfortable and you're used to? So it's like that. It's being able to say, okay, what do I want? Or what are the possibilities? And what do I have to work with? And then filling that gap. And, I think the other thing too is we've been living in a world of so much of this big gap and chasing after. And it's closing that gap. So instead of this chasing after all the time, it's, what do I want? I just want to cook this really good meal. And, in other words, I'm cooking up that creative energy of cooking up a delicious life.
Yeah. Sometimes we are nervous about trying a new recipe, going in a new direction. And, with me, with my restructuring of my business, and I have a sense of where I want to go, but I'm not completely sure. And so I turn to you because I know that you look into the astrology and the numerology. And for me, I've realized that that is something you can rely on. Those are systems, that's science. For someone who puts the time to study it, it's easily translated into something that you can work with. So what we want to talk about today is going from the confused state to having confidence in, what it is you're going towards. Even if you don't have all the answers, at least you've got some confidence, some clarity, I guess is the main thing. Today, we're going to be sharing your 10 steps. We've talked about those, that we're going to start with the first step. The first step is when we're feeling confused, uncertain, maybe we're fearful. So maybe you could take us through those 10 steps and describe what they're all about for us. Can you?
Well, I think the starting point is always, where am I? What do I want? And what don't I want? I think that's always our starting point, and that's something we can ask ourselves in any moment. But I think there's also that other piece of that long distance. Like, what am I here for? Like, what is your life path and purpose? What are you here to learn? What is it that gives you fulfillment? And, so there's parts of the astrology that are kind of like, it's almost what I call is like out in that distance. And yet it's right in your core at the same time. It's, what am I here for? Like, what is my life? So, for example, my life path and purpose is a 3. So it's about self-worth, communication, and all those pieces. So though that gives me a marker to say, from a career point of view, I need to be speaking, I need to be expressing myself, and I'm on a journey of increasing my self-confidence. Absolutely. So what am I doing now? I'm helping other people with their self-confidence.
We teach what we need to learn, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, it's these things that give us our markers. There's something else in astrology called your North Node, and that is kind of taking what have you come into this world with, and what are you here to do with it and to grow into? So we've got those markers as one piece. Then, I do retreats for creating your vision board. And, often we've seen with vision boards, it's this, shopping list in pictorial shopping list. But to me, having that vision board, it's about having a place to land the essence of what it is that you're about, that picture that depicts you when you're happy. So we've got that vision we have of ourselves. And the other part that I like about having vision boards is the fact that when you can see pictures, there's room and space in pictures. And I think that's, what people need to recognize is there's room and space for this to move and grow. And the same with your astrology. They're markers. Look, this is the essence of this, and this is the essence of this. You're going to interpret it and unfold it, and the circumstances are going to come into your life to shape it that's true for you. It's never about me giving you answers. It's about me giving you insights and awareness and forecast of the energy that's available for you to tap into and use. That's the juicy stuff, right? That's the ingredients. You've got this to work with. So it's like, where am I right now? What is it I want? And
sometimes we don't even know that, though. For me, I knew that I was at a point where I needed to figure that out, but the answers weren't coming to me, and it's like, do I dare to even trust that I can take myself in this new direction? So there was a lot of that uncertainty, and I needed to remind myself. So some of the numerology and the astrology that you've provided for me in the past has given me some clues as to what I need to focus on. So as you were saying, you know what your life path is, so you know the things that you need to do. It's almost like we need to jump into the most uncomfortable part of who we are, because that's where that's when it all opens up, if we can do that. But we really need a little bit of hand-holding or guidance or pushing, and the courage, I think. And I think that's where you come in. Is great to check your charts and all of those things, but you don't just leave it there. You have a way of intuiting exactly what the person needs to hear to kind of light that fire, don't you?
It kind of comes with the package.
And you're not afraid to say it either.
No, but I think for me, what it does is it gives you confidence to trust yourself. It's like, more often than not, when I'm working with someone, I'm giving them confirmation. Yeah, okay, I am on track. Yes, I do know this. Oh, And it's living above where you are just that bit. It's not trying to go beyond where you are. I use the term the unfolding way. There is no absolute on how things are going to turn out. You and I both know we're on this creative path. And again, it's these markers. It's like, I know I'm going towards this, but you can have a guest on your podcast and that guest turns things around on a dime for you in a second because of one conversation that you have, and you end up going down a different path. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how life is. And I think for me, as I've accumulated this knowledge of astrology and feng shui and Chinese metaphysics, it always comes back to strengthening this core certainty of ourselves. So you're in more of a place as, I got this. Yes, that is my area of growth next,
Mm-hmm.
and this is what I'm going towards. For as much as I can see right now, for as much as I know what I really want, if this is what happiness looks like for me, or what I think happiness looks like for me, or if the astrology can help you to see what does spark you up and what does shut you down, then you can just make the choices of, okay, I'm going to go for the stuff that sparks me up. And I think the other piece too is just this whole piece of focusing on the positive. Focus on your strengths and work with your strengths, because you're going to go further with your strengths than you are by trying to fix your weaknesses all the time.
Yeah, that could hurt.
Yeah, we need to know they're there. It's good to be conscious they're there, but it's follow the opportunities.
So that was step one. So from that point, we get into step two. So step two is about exploring the different options that are available to us.
In numerology too is about balance and relationship, so it's like, where am I with what's going on right now? Where am I with that idea or that spark? And what do I choose? And I think the other thing we can be aware of too is comparison can come in when we're looking at different things, and that kills us, comparison. So being able to get away from the comparing of what other people have and come back to yourself and saying, okay, this is the relationship I want to have with this person, or this is choosing this will give me balance and harmony. I think we operate best when we can find that place of balance and harmony. Like, everybody's being told to get out of the comfort zone. And if the comfort zone is stuck and lazy or constant procrastination, the energy is downward spiral or depleting. That's the comfort zone you want to get out of. Confidence to me is a comfort zone. What do you do in healing? You bring people back to balance. Well, when they're back to balance, they can easily take the next step. It's not about bringing them back to a balanced state where they're stuck. It's bringing them back to a balanced state where they've got their energy is almost reconnected and realigned. So then they can take the next step and feel confident in doing that.
Mm-hmm. So then what is the next step? Step three.
So, well, that's where the magic is. That's the creative energy.
I love that part.
Yeah. And, like I said before, three is a good number for me. I love that creative energy. It is. It's like, okay, so what do I want? What were the choices I had? Now, what am I going to do with them? And I mean, the other thing that's related to the three is joie de vivre. It's expression. So, what makes you happy? It's not so much about going from confusion to clarity. As we go along, it's working with the confusion and clarifying that piece, and then clarifying the next piece, and then clarifying the next piece. And so it's not a when I get there, I will be clear. It's where am I right now? What do I need to get clear on? Okay, so now that's clear. What we're talking about here is we start at this place of this point of choice every moment in our life.
We wake up with it, right?
We wake up with it, right? Like, you and I have a choice right now. Do we continue? Don't we? Like, and that's the thing, is for us to realize we have choice all the time. Yeah. And how do we work the magic?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the fun part of the creation process. But, There are some things that can get in the way of that creation process. And sometimes we still need to heal a little bit of that fear of going forward. So even dipping back to step 2 and, trusting our own identity, it really isn't an A to Z path, is it? I mean, you can go back and forth with this path, but I like what you said about each step is a sort of a completed step. So we go from the beginning of that step and then we get to how do we clarify what that step is all about, and then we can get on to the next step. So it is a bit of a journey, and there's some work on each step.
If we think of ourselves, it's like we bring our past experiences a thread through to our next choice, right? And it's the same thing. It's like getting clearer on your identity of who you are today, let's say. You're going to have that same experience tomorrow and the next day and the next day. So it's always going to be there. It's just sometimes we're going to spend more time focusing on it because that's the piece that's, let's say, lacking or unclear or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Same as the creative process. It's like, well, I mean, really that takes us into step 4. It's like building that momentum. Like it's one thing to have the creative ideas, but it's another thing to, like any skill, to practice it. So practicing on an ongoing basis, then we get our experience out of it. We get that confidence that builds in it because we have the experience of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then that starts to give us more of a structure and a bit more order.
Yeah. And grounded. And when we ground something, we kind of own it, and then we can use that as a foundation to build the next step. So what's step 5? What's the next step?
Well, that's where, okay, now you got this going along. How do you want to expand it? How do you want to take it to the next level? And or, if you're writing a book, you could have your structure formulated, but then it's like, oh, but then I've got this idea that comes in, or if I take it in this direction, it's going to be more fulfilling or more exciting than if I'd kept going the way that I was, right? The 5 energy is constantly changing. It's like it can be us choosing the change and expansion, or it could be us getting a curveball that throws in and says, okay, well, you thought you were going along really nice and smoothly there, and it's like, okay, let's throw this in. Some of that can be interpreted as not so great, but at the end of the day, I like to think that everything is here for our highest good.
Yeah, I wonder though, at that 5th stage, when the curveball comes, have you noticed, is that a time where people might give up on the path? Is that a possibility at that stage because of the curveball and the confidence aspect, do you think?
You know what? I think, I was just saying that. I think maybe what it could do is it could kind of bring you back to, that one again. Okay, I've been hit. Now I'm in all this uncertainty. Where do I start? I think that it does have that. I think the other side of it, though, is, 5 is along the way. And, 9 is the ending and completion. Maybe there's less likely of giving up because you're kind of in the middle of it. So there'll be this pull to, okay, I got to change my course, but I'm not giving up. Like it's not an ending. Like when you're working with the 9 energy in numerology, it's like that's where the completion is. And there's a sense of ending, like when somebody's looking to retire, that's, often the first place I look, because can you retire before then? Absolutely. But is there going to be a feeling of, okay, you know what? I am done with this now. This is an end of this chapter. It's a totally different energy when you're making choices like that in an energy of completion than when it's an energy of change, right? I might be looking at somebody's numbers, for example, and see, okay, the 5 is where maybe somebody decides to become a consultant, but not retire. So it's that change. It's like, no, I'm not going to the office every day. I'm moving into this consultancy state or part-time state, and then the completion comes later.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Where do we find ourselves in step 6?
Well, 6 can be that place where creating a new vision after what's just changed is creating a new vision. It's also a state of acceptance, right? It's okay. So these are things have come. And I think it's also, if you look at it as we go along, by the time you've been working on yourself, looking at your life, I mean, even if you put this into years, if you said you started on a path looking at these different aspects of yourself and your life, and you get to year 6, there's this place of, okay, you know what, I'm feeling okay with this, or I'm, maybe a big change came in. Sometimes I'll have somebody who's a widow, and by the time you've hit 6 years, you're in a whole different place. A lot of healing and changes have come into place that you're going to find yourself in a different place. It's this place of, okay, what is my vision with these new circumstances, right? But not as I'm just experiencing what I've got in that newness and that uncertainty of not walking this path or having these experiences for a while. I'm at this new level. So it's almost like a restructuring, the way that I see it. Restructuring. It's kind of like clearing up the chaos and putting things in order. Okay, I've been working for a while and I got a lot of pile of papers on my desk. Let me file some of these. But you also know how to file them, right? Because you've kind of got to that point of, okay, I can organize them in this way. Whereas until then, okay, you may have had a filing system or whatever, but that changing piece means you need to restructure and change the way that you're either seeing things or organizing things, if you kind of want to put it that way.
And that then takes us to step 7. What's that all about?
Seven is our calling to go within. It's a time for us to be, it can be used from research point of view, the 7 energy, but it's also that place of self-reflection. And, if you're looking in a cycle of 9 years or 9 months or however 9 days, even you can do it. When you're hitting the 7, I mean, it's the 7th day of rest, which is kind of interesting how it plays out this way. But which it is, it's, a recharging, if you will, recharging your energy. And the other is also that is what I've done until here, feeding my soul. And where I'm going, is it in alignment with my soul and my spirit? Like if you're going to have the satisfaction and achievement, you want it in line with your spirit, right? Otherwise, it's, yes. I mean, how many people do we know have incredible success, maybe financial success, and yet there's this place of emptiness, or something's maybe not even emptiness, maybe just something feels like it's missing. There's just not the same fulfillment. And if fulfillment is missing, it's a spiritual piece. We're working with all those layers, right? Mental, emotional, and spiritual, and physical, and they all need to be satisfied for us to find fulfillment, because fulfillment is all 4 of those, right?
Yeah. And after that point, step 8. Now, I know in numerology, 8 is the number. It's the money number. It's the culmination of things that you can benefit from. So what happens in step 8 for us?
I think the easiest way of saying it is where everything comes together. You've planted the seeds, you've nurtured the seeds, you've watched them grow. Did they get pollinated, at step 5, or did the wind, blow everything off, and your harvest isn't going to be as good as you expected it to be? Or are you right on track? You've had all the support externally and internally to bring things to fruition in a big way. And that's where, it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. And, I think we have to remember too, is that we've got lots of pieces of our life going on at the same time. And, you can't be putting full energy in every aspect of our life all the time. It's like, if you're going for the money, if the focus is on money, the focus is not on health. So I think we have to recognize is, can we have money and health? Yes. But to make a decision and to come to that point is which is the one that you chose, which is the one you chose more often, right? So it's like you're spending all this time and all this energy focused on health and well-being. You're going to have a bigger experience of health and well-being than if you've spent your energy on health and well-being and money and this and relationships and that. It occurred to me the other day is just how it's like the vision boards. We just expect everything at once. There just seems to be this piece where we just expect everything to be at its greatest expansion with the 8 energy, if that makes sense to you.
Expecting everything to have come together and it all be blooming at the same time. What I think I'm hearing you're saying is there are some buds that are still in bud, but they need to be, or, that fruit will be ripe when that fruit will be ripe. Is that what you're saying?
What we sow, so shall we reap. And the 8 energy is where 8 can also represent the workaholic. Okay. So you take a look. Okay. So maybe there's great success because you've been a workaholic on a material level, but then what also is coming to harvest at the same time in your relationships what's also coming to harvest at the same time in your health. Because if all the energy is gone into harvesting, that's to say monetary gain or whatever, if you've been compromising your health or compromising relationships along the way, then you're also going to be reaping the harvest of that. Right.
And it might not be exactly what you hoped to harvest.
Exactly. And so sometimes we get to that place because we just weren't aware of the impact of our choices. Like it's almost like tunnel vision, right? It's just like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. These are the values that are driving me to do these. Like it's not about right, wrong, good or bad. It's just, like sometimes that's where we're at. And, I think the other side of being at this age and stage of life is, we hopefully have gained wisdom along the way, and that view is much wider by now, right? And so in that view, we also get to see what our values are at the same time.
And so that leads to step 9. What's 9 all about?
There's 2 ways of looking at 9, or always probably a lot more, but right now we'll say that is, when you come to this fullness, then you have a harvest. You have a harvest to share. So whether that harvest is in that understanding of yourself, and these are my gifts and talents, and what am I bringing out to the world? How am I sharing this? It could be, 9 is related to humanitarian causes and things like that. So is there something that you've always wanted to be part of and that you haven't been part of until now? Or maybe you didn't have the wealth to be able to make choices, or maybe you didn't have the resources that you can share with others. So whether the resources are your intellect or your joie de vivre, or whatever it is that you have, it's this reminder and this time for really sharing it. And there's the letting go piece. So it's the letting go in the sense of, I don't need this anymore. Who can it serve, right? But there's also that letting go of, maybe part of it is I've achieved this, so I don't need to be going after it anymore. Or it can be letting go of
what doesn't serve you anymore, I guess.
Exactly. And then you find yourself back at, that new point again. It's like, okay, who am I now and what am I doing? But if you'd used your 7 energy back then, if you knew why what you were doing with the harvest, then it's already feeding into the next part. But I find a lot of people come to me, if we're looking at from a numerology point of view, in a 9 and a 1 year. The 9 is the ending and the closure, and the 1 is the new beginning. But because of the way the energy works, really, you've got 18 months, which is often a place of uncertainty, or that place of discovery or deciding what's next. It's almost like the chrysalis stage, before
Mm.
the butterfly emerges. It's it can almost be a bit soupy. Some people, it's like, okay, and there's, sometimes we can be really in an urgency. It's just like, what am I supposed to be doing? Where am I going? And it doesn't matter how hard you try, it just isn't there for you to see. How do we get comfortable being in that place? I think that's maybe one of the pieces that a lot of us, I mean, there's always uncertainty in life, and I think nowadays we're really being called to be comfortable in the uncertainty and to get creative with what we have, and creative with what we want to bring to the world, and creative with what the change is what we want to have. And whether it's something as simple as smiling at the cashier, or like that's bringing change, that's having impact, right?
It's funny you mentioned about, being in the cocoon. So if we think of the caterpillar, and, the caterpillar goes into the cocoon, it's dark in there, there's nothing much happening. Then it does turn to soup, does turn to mush before it can actually, grow its butterfly wings. And then even then it's got some work in store to break through that chrysalis before, it sees the light of day again. And then the wings can unfurl, and then we see the beauty of the wings. And I mean that, when we look at nature in cycles, and that's what astrology is, and to some degree numerology is nature too. And when we look at these things, there is a cycle, right? There's a flow and a cycle. And if you go with the flow, it's a little easier than if you're trying to go against the flow, or, swim upstream kind of thing. And that's what I find with the work that you're doing is, you talked about the markers. So we need to kind of know where we are. And at that point, we can either just take a breath, because we're in that stage of, this is a time to just be, even though our instinct or our upbringing or just the way we've always done things is, I've got to push, 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 push forward. It's not always a time for pushing. And that's what I tell my clients too. There's the yin and the yang of everything, right? So there's the downtime, and the downtime is for the reflection and the breathing. And then you're ramping up to the uptime. But if you try to do uptime activities in a downtime phase, you're not going to get very far. So yeah, I see the cycles are really important, and each one of them has a purpose, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And the other thing that I want to say is, sometimes we think, I think our biggest undoing is this point of thinking that when we're in that state, we're in a waiting mode. And when we're in a waiting mode, we often feel powerless. And when we realize is, no, I'm in this place, I'm not in a waiting mode. I'm actually you're still in a discovery mode. Like, whether you're closing your eyes and imagining, you're still you're still in a creative process. One of the reasons I teach people how to work with the new moon. And one of the reasons I like that, and I say, you'll never be stuck again once you work with the new moon. If you're only working with intention, right? Like, because you don't know what the other piece is, you're working with something. When you're moving in discovery, you're still moving forward. There's this illusion that until you achieve, until you have, you're waiting or chasing. And meanwhile, everything is right here. Like, we've got everything right here in each moment. Right? So I think, this whole waiting piece is where we get stuck, and where we diminish ourselves. We've diminished the way we look at ourselves, and we diminish what we have often when we feel like we're in that waiting and not knowing place, as opposed to, it gives us this prompt. What do you have? Like, we'll come back to the beginning of that. What do you have? What resources do you have to work with? Who are you? What do you love?
Mhm.
And and that's the void where everything gets created out of, and the magic.
And does that lead us to step 10?
I think that is step 10, right? Like
Yeah.
that it's the new beginning with a greater consciousness. It's and what's interesting with the one, it can be the initiator or it can be the victim. So, if you're in this, I'm waiting, I don't know the answer, or these things happen to me and I'm in this place, well, then you're going to have a different experience than these things happen. This is where I am. What do I choose?
Mhm.
Right. And I think when we have the zero is an amplifier, but it's also a connection to the divine. So it amplifying insecurity, or like I said, that victim place, or is it amplifying as, oh, here we go again. Now I got more awareness and more juice, and it's like, okay, what am I creating now?
Yeah, yeah, it's great. And, and as we get older, I find that we start to realize that in order to achieve what we want to achieve, we really need to be discerning with our time and our effort. And for me, it's worth spending some money so I can stop running around in circles and get to the point. And and that's really what you do to help people is, instead of running around in circles, then I get a new direction and I get to see things from a different perspective. So if somebody wanted to get some help in, I mean, these steps are all sometimes they can be quite challenging, and to have somebody as a guide and to just kind of take you out of the muck sometimes when it feels like you're in quicksand sometimes. How would people get in touch with you, Judy?
The easiest way is my website, judio.ca. I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook, but that's the fastest and easiest way to get hold of me. And,
Mm.
the only way that somebody's going to know whether they want to work with me is to have a conversation first. Everything starts with a conversation. No, it's personal.
Yeah, yeah, it's
it's, it,
between the
it,
two of you.
It is. It's deeply personal, and you want to know that you can feel that you can trust me, and feel comfortable, and that, yeah, absolutely, I have your best interests, and I'm not here to tell you how you are or tell you what you should do. I'm just here to give you. It's like I get to see this invisible evidence and present it to you. It's like, oh, look, it's right here. Oh, you've got the support for this year. And at the end of the day, I think that's exactly it. It's I help you get invisible support, the support of knowing that, yeah, this is your talent. When we were looking at your chart the other day, I just get so excited. It's like, oh my God, you've got so many pieces all lined up for you right now. It's like magic. And for me to be able to see that for somebody, like, it makes me excited, right? Like
Yeah,
it's just the juice is like, oh my God, you got this, girl.
yeah, it's precious. It's precious.
Oh, yeah, it's so sweet to be able. And you know what? I think most people don't realize that they do have it. Even if you think you're lost, like most of the time you're not. Like it's all right there. I just get to have, like I said, the privilege to remind you. Oh my God, you've got this, and you got this, and you got this. Let's get cooking.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much for always lighting my way whenever I feel it's too dark. I turn to you, and you've always got a light for me. So, thanks, Judy, so much for
thank,
all of that.
thank you, Deb. We know how much I love working with you.
That's great. So again, if anybody wants to contact Judy O, just go to judio.ca and the link will be in the show notes. And I thank you all for listening. And thanks, Judy, for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Deb.
Go to ownthegray.ca to follow us and listen to more great episodes. Or you can listen on Apple, Spotify, Google, iTunes, Amazon Music, Stitcher, and more. This episode of Own the Grey is brought to you by I Am. Discover your unique talents, realize your potential, and align to your path. Take the first step to uncover your life purpose by visiting debrajones.ca/courses.